Let's talk about Baroque fashion era. Baroque fashion started around 1620. Male attire was influenced by English Civil War and the 30 Years' War of Catholic against Protestant, which devastated extended regions. Women's clothing looked to exhibit wealth through ornamentation instead of jewelry. Meanwhile, France continued to grow as a wealthy monarchy. Under the rule of Louis XIV, this nation became the cultural center of Europe, and its court usually had the lead in fashionable style. The second half of the 17th century was the peak of Baroque fashion, with exuberant outfits for exhibiting wealth, especially for men. The fashion icon on that era is Louis XIV. The rise of Louis XIV, the Sun King, and his court at Versailles signaled the dawn of the classical Baroque era in art, architecture, music, and fashion. It was defined by natural curving silhouettes, flowing lines, gold filigree, rich colors, and overall voluptuous clothing content an abundance of lace, pearls, ribbon, and gold embroidery, and was refreshingly free from the excessive decoration of the Renaissance. Fashion changed rapidly. The growing middle class would copy the style of the nobles, who would in return create a new fashion to stay more refined than the middle class. Unlike the earlier period where body sleeves, skirts, jackets, and breeches were made to mix and match, clothing during the period was made as separate and entire matching outfits, often made of the same fabric. This was referred to as ensuite and was the predecessor for our modern-day suit. Seasonality also began to be widely used, a grateful relief from year-long heavy gowns and doublets as worn during the Renaissance. The most important development of this period was the rise fashion designer after Louis XIV certified the establishment of dressmaker's guild. This profession contained both men and women. The most popular designers were well pursued by the nobility and even the middle class. Cavaliers' women's clothing. Women's clothing became much less restricting. Flexible stays replaced hard, tight-fitting corsets. Usually 2 skirts were worn, the overskirt, mantua, open at the front and usually forming a train or a bustle at the back and an underskirt. The plunging neckline called the décolletage became common, often accompanied with wide lace collars. Sleeves were large, gathered at the wrist or elbow and often with turned-back lace cuffs. Decoration consisted only of lace, tie, and rosetted ribbons, limited embroidery, and simple
Details of
jewelry.
clothing: melon sleeve, lace standing collar, lace sleeve, dark ground with lace collar and virago sleeve, and silhouette of woman clothing. Lines and fabric. Usually they use brocade were used more often than pattern fabric, and usually decoration consisted only of lace, tied or roasted ribbon, limited embroidery, and simple pearl jewelry. Puritan woman clothing. Detail of Puritan woman clothing: the waistcoat, petticoat, apron, cuff sleeve. Fabric: wool and lining were used in Puritan clothing instead of satin and lace. Color: most Puritan dressed in brown or indigo because brown vegetable and indigo dyes were plentiful. They wore other colors as well. Silhouette: the silhouette gradually softened as high corset from the Renaissance were replaced by flexible stay. The neckline was low and lace collar were used for decoration. Virago sleeve, which were made of large strips of different fabric gathered at the elbow, were popular. The fashion trends were mostly defined and followed by the monarch and noble court, who were the social class able to afford expensive attire. Clothing was often big and ostentatious and designed for differentiation the noble from the lower classes.
The Cavaliers. A falling band-style collar. The peplum of his doublet is a truly series of white prickles. Boots have a deep couches below the knee. Doublet features pant sleeves. Breeches tapering to the knee are softly without padding between the legs. It was much less restrained from the Renaissance fashions and copied woman styles of the earlier period with its high waist, wide lace collar, and lace cuffs. This style also featured knee boots, high boots often turned down with lace, wide-brimmed hats with feathers, long lost hair, pointed braids and moustache, and caps on over one shoulder. Baroque cavaliers. A low crown with brimmed cavalier style, an unstarched filling ruff, a soft doublet with a vertical slashes in the sleeves. He wears a short shirt on the waist that gives the illusion of shirt and torso. A long curling moustache. Fabrics are quite lavish, delicate cuffs. The white cuff with the lace edge in the boot house. Edge in the lining and lace cuff that are worn folded over the boot cuff, or the decorative extensions of the bottom of the breech. Silver silhouette, he is not going to be extreme soft-caliber dress, but is certainly influenced by it. The Puritans. Scarves like stinkers are passage boat. Breeches become close-fitting and either tight button or buckle at the knee with a hose when on it. This sweater was referred to the culturally as the Persian style and still served the best of the men's coat, waistcoat, and breech. This was strongly opposed to sensual appearances and were strong advocates of property, modesty, and decorum. Britain clothing reflected the religious view that people should avoid material acts in order to focus more on internal beauty and richness. Fold hat, ruff, doublet, cuffs, breeches, garters, stockings, shoes. The colonial clothing worn by Persian men were quite heavy and made from materials such as wool, linen, or leather.
Women's accessories. Pairs of pearl jewelry often containing a short necklace, drop earrings, a string for the hair, dress clasps for the body, sleeves, and waist are encountered in a great many of portraits for Baroque period. The earrings were often simple drop-shaped pearls suspended from a golden earring, but by the 1650s, more elaborate styles started to be worn. The most typical and well-known earring type from the late 17th century is the guirondelle, an earring which comprises a centerpiece from which three dangling ornaments are suspended. Let's see the main accessories. Baroque era wigs. It's said that Louis lost his hair as the result of an illness. He started wearing a wig or false hair, and this became the fashion. Wigs grew larger and longer and more elaborate from 1680. They took an monumental proportion with widths of curls falling over the shoulder, and the French sold wigs to the whole Europe, and the art of wig making became truly creative. Full wig, false hair points, patches, and scented hairpieces were all worn throughout the century. And there is a lot types of wig which I have listed. Nadal's carry hat with the headgear. Cavalier hat is a variety of wide-brimmed hat popular in 17th century. These hats were often made from felt and usually trimmed with an ostrich plumage. They were often cocked up or had one side of the brim pinned to the side of the crown of the hat, which was decorated with feathers. Next, the gloves. In the 16th and 17th centuries, so much ethic developed around that the men's gloves in particular grew wider and more decorative, as they were often carried rather than worn. It was taboo to offer to shake a hand wearing glove or to accept a gift in glove, nor was it acceptable to remove them with the teeth. Approaching an altar in church, men had to remove their gloves and their right glove had to be removed when coming into the presence of a social superior as a marked respect. The keeping on the glove indicated that you retain power by declining physical contact, whereas the removal meant you deferred a higher position. Gloves would also be put off when playing cards or when eating. And let's get ahead to the last slide, which is footwear. As we all know, every era they change the footwear into different pattern. And here are some of the footwear that I have listed. Thank you.